interview with me today. Can you first just...
Okay. So I teach at a school called Peachland Elementary in the Newhall School District, and I'm a third grade teacher. And my school is very English language populated, and a majority of students, about 64%, are Hispanic and language learners. So I have, just in my class alone, out of 24 students, I have 16 ELs. So that's kind of the population. It's a lot different than schools like Stevenson Ranch, who is more predominantly Caucasian. So it's very different types of schools in the district.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so most of the questions I'm going to ask you are going to have to do with lesson planning. So just answer as best as you can, and then if the question doesn't really fit, if you could just explain what you do differently or something like that instead, that's fine. So the first question I have is, how long before a lesson do you usually start preparing for it?
So at the beginning of the school year, I was actually planning the night before because I felt that everything changed. I would make a plan for the week and then it wouldn't go as I expected. Mm-hmm. So I'm very detail oriented. So I would write everything the night before, so it wasn't a whole overview and then I didn't get to it. But then that was getting me very discombobulated. So I started doing plans for the whole week. So usually on Saturday or Sunday, I have a template that I fill in, and I just fill out my plan for the week, and then whatever I don't get to in a day, I just carry over to the next day. And it's been a lot easier.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the next question I have is, and you sort of answered this anyway, but do you write out a formal lesson plan for every week? And do you use a specific format for it?
Okay, so during the credential program, we use, maybe you're familiar with it, TaskStream. And it was creating, I learned how to make lesson plans that were very detailed. Mm-hmm. But then I found when I was creating lesson plans as a teacher, it just wasn't realistic to have that much detail for every lesson I did. Right. So I do have a lesson objective. I have the strategies and the differentiated instruction. It's definitely not as detailed as I had it in the credential program.
Require that you submit your lesson plans?
Yes, my principal requires. So at the beginning of the year, I was sending her my daily plan, and it got kind of tedious for me to have to do it every day. So once I started planning for the whole week, I just sent her my whole Sundays. And then that way she has it, so if she wants to come through, she can kind of see where I'm going to be at.
The weekly.
Yeah, she asked. There's one other. She's in kindergarten. We have to send our plans to her every day for the whole year.
Oh, okay. So then, other teachers who've been there for teachers, did they have to send any lesson plans or anything to her?
No, it's the coordinator. Sorry, the volume is. I can hear myself talk.
I see why. Okay. Is it any better?
Yeah. Wait. No, it's like an echo.
Oh no. Okay, it might just be because I should have probably put in headphones, but.
That's okay. As long as you're getting what I'm saying, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Okay, yeah. So in talking to my VITSA coordinator, she told me that all principals don't require the type of lesson plan.
Cool. Let's see. Okay, so when you do your lesson plans, do you create specific lessons for every part of the day, or is it more just a general overview of what you're going to do?
Kind of like a chart table, and I break it down by time and subject. I do an objective, the activity we're going to be doing, the extension. I do that for each subject.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So, is it kind of broken down by the time of day?
Different time slots.
Okay.
And subjects.
Let's see. How much time would you say that you spend preparing your lessons each week?
At the beginning of the year, it was taking me a really long time, and it still is very time consuming, but I'm able to manage it more. Mm-hmm. And now that I have a better idea of how to adjust my lessons appropriately, so I would go in probably like 4 hours, 5 hours over the weekend, in addition to staying later.
Okay. And are you still doing that, or was that more just at the beginning?
Sorry?
Are you still doing that, or is that more just at the beginning of the school year?
I'm still doing that. I stay typically till 4:35 each day, and then I'll come in on Sunday for a few hours to prep for the week.
Right. Okay. All right. Do you use a lot of online resources for lesson planning?
You mean like strategies that or
the internet a lot and like lesson ideas, or like, I don't know, stuff on Pinterest, or like blogs that you find, teaching blogs, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge supporter of Pinterest, and teachers pay teachers.
Yeah.
So a lot of my money has gone to that website.
Yeah, that website's pretty awesome.
And that I've learned from other teachers. We use BrainPop Junior, which is a great video resource to kind of prep lessons and kind of build their background knowledge. And can you hear me? I keep hearing my echo.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I actually use YouTube a lot. We use something called Safari Montage that is direct videos. We use technology for a lot.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so with back to like your actual lesson plan that you create. Hi, Alyssa. Can you tell me what grade you're teaching? And then I'm going to get started with the questions about the interview.
Yeah, I've taught 7th and 8th grade, and I teach 4th grade.
Okay, great, thanks. So let's just start at the beginning. So how long before a lesson do you usually spend preparing?
I have a pretty good idea of the unit I'm going to be teaching about a month or two ahead of time, and I actually plan out specific lessons a week before.
Okay. And how long would you say it usually takes you to plan your lessons, like for that week? Just an estimate's fine.
What?
Just an estimate's fine.
Depending on just how much we can cover, or how long it takes to teach a certain standard or objective. Not long, maybe like a day or two.
Okay. Do you write out formal lesson plans, and do you use a certain or specific format for your lesson plans?
Yeah, my school actually required a really specific format, and so there was a template that was provided by our principals, and we just filled in that each week. But I also made a lot of like personal changes to the template, so it worked best for me. Also with like a place to reflect on it and how I would change it in the future.
Sorry, some stuff popped up on my screen. Okay, so does your school require that you submit your lesson plans to an administrator?
Yes, each week. They are due Monday at 8 a.m.
Okay.
And now we get a call by noon.
And does your administrator ever give you feedback on your lesson plans?
Yeah, in writing, usually by like Wednesday or Thursday. They have like a checklist of different parts of like blooms that they're looking for, as well as like different parts of like our school goals that they were looking for, like technology and reading and literacy in general.
Okay. And do you find that helpful, or is it just more like a formality?
In the beginning, when I was a newer teacher, it was really helpful because it was like almost like a checklist. If I had all these things, then I felt successful, and then I felt really confident in my lessons. But by the end of the first year, it just felt like a formality, and I didn't even really look at them.
Okay. Okay, so do you create a general lesson plan for your day, or do you create more specific lesson plans for each subject that you're teaching?
Well, we're required to have individual lessons submitted for each subject, but I think, like, personally, I mean, I would write those out, but like the day before or 2 days before, I would kind of plan out my full day and what that looks like and how they transition to each other. So in a way, like, kind of both.
Okay. Let's see. Do you look online often for lesson planning ideas?
Yes, very often. Why recreate the wheel when it's already been created and done really, really well with a presentation. So, yeah, there's a lot of different resources out there, especially for like when we transition to Common Core, or even if you really want to like push technology and like integrating technology into the classroom. There's so many different things that have already been created, and build those into lessons or literally just take a lesson.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, all right. So do you actually use your lesson plan that you write to teach, or do you use it more as a general guide?
I think it serves as a really good structure. Sometimes things come up in a lesson where it just makes more sense to go in a different direction. But I think as long as the objective is really reached in one day or another, that's what's important. So I would think of it as more like a guiding framework. I don't script my lesson plans, so I don't have like a script to follow.
Right,
More of
right.
just like a structure.
Okay, thank you. All right. What do you do after the lesson? Do you do any follow up with your lesson plan? Like, do you take notes while you're doing it and then follow up with that later, or do you just kind of toss it to the side and move on?
Yeah, because I have to submit my lessons plans so far in advance of when I actually will teach it. I feel like when I'm actually preparing for it, either that day of or the day before, if I'm making a presentation or getting together my activity, if I make changes, I'll actually go and make changes to my personal file, and I won't necessarily resubmit. Um, but as far as like reflecting, I will make changes if that happened. But unless I'm tracking specific data, I won't necessarily go back and be like, this worked really great, good job.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And let's see. Do you write objectives for each lesson?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only are they required by my school, my students have come to really expect them and expect that we're going to achieve them.
Okay. Can you give me an example of like the format that you write your objectives in?
Yeah, our school requires that we write them in I can statements.
Okay.
So we have like an I can little thing on the board, and for every lesson, we have to have, by the end of the lesson, I can do this. And so that's kind of the format that our whole school follows.
Okay. And do you like that format, or do you prefer other ways of writing objectives?
It's nice. I think one of the most important things to note on that is that it needs to be in student-friendly language. It doesn't need to be the copy and paste objective from whatever standards you're following.
Right.
It needs to be in like where a student would say, I can do this at the end of the lesson. They wouldn't be able to say, I can evaluate that. They're not going to say that. But if they can say, I can, explain to a friend this, concept, I think it's worthwhile to do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. Is there any other tips or things you could tell me about lesson planning that you think would be helpful for me?
Just ask veteran teachers. I think sometimes they have like the best tips in creating lesson plans, and they have really good ones. But definitely always rework them to make them your own and make them fit.
All right. Well, thank you.
With Miss Carview, a third grade teacher, and the second interview was with Miss Brigham, a fourth grade teacher, who's also taught middle school math. So one thing that I found to be common between both of them was that they both planned their lessons at the beginning of the week for the whole week, and they were both required to submit these lessons to their principal. Miss Carview said that it was because she was a first-year teacher, and Miss Brigham said that everyone at her school was required to do that. So it seems to be a common theme that principals or administrators are going to want to take a look at the lesson plans to make sure that teachers are on track, and this is especially important for new teachers. Also, both of them said that they were required to use a certain lesson plan format. So as I start practicing lesson planning, it will be important that I can easily adapt to different types of lesson plan formats and that I don't get just stuck in one way in case the school requires a specific format for me to use. I also learned that scripting out what you're going to say isn't necessarily something you should do, but making sure that you have specific plans for each part of your day is really important. So a general overview lesson plan isn't going to do much good, but breaking it down by time or breaking it down by each specific activity will be a good way to plan my day. Also, both teachers let me know that there are a lot of online resources that can be really good. Miss Carview said that she really likes to use Teachers Pay Teachers, and that there's a lot of great resources on there, so I plan to check that out. I've looked around a little bit on that website, and I know there's a lot of good stuff on there, but it's great to hear that teachers really like to use that. And Pinterest is also another big one. I have done a lot of pinning of teacher resources, so I know that that can be a great resource too, so I plan to use that as I start lesson planning. Let's see. Another common thing I found between the two interviews was that both teachers actually use I CAN objectives at their schools. So they have to write an I CAN statement for every lesson that they teach and put it up on the board for students to see, which I think is a great way to keep students part of the learning and to know what they're working towards. So overall, I found this exercise to be really helpful. Talking to two teachers with at least a little bit more experience than I have lesson planning for elementary school is really helpful. I've taught middle school, but I haven't taught elementary school, so I really enjoy hearing their ideas and feedback about how to lesson plan for an elementary school classroom.